All right, good afternoon. Today we're going to be looking at thinking and language. That noise in the background is my coffee brewing. Sorry. All right, so whenever you hear the word thinking, you always want to associate that with cognition. Cognition is our higher mental processes. So thinking, knowing, our memory, the way we communicate, learning, all of these higher mental processes make up our cognition. All right, so in this section, we started talking about a concept, but in a previous unit, when we looked at the lifespan, we looked at the same concept, but called something different. So in the thinking and language unit, it's called a schema. So a schema, a concept, they're both very similar. They're categories that we group similar information into. So concept. So we have certain concepts or categories or schemas for tools. If you come across, a tool in your garage, you don't have to specifically know what it's called, what type of saw it is or whatever. You can just simply say tool. So that's a category that we just fit it into, like holidays or fruit. I go to the market and I'm walking through the produce aisle and I see these new brands of fruit and I'm like, okay, what is that? But I don't have to know the name to just categorize it as a fruit. Or we have categories for school supplies. All right, so whenever I ask you to think of a particular category, whatever comes to mind, that would be your prototype. So in class, I had you draw a country singer and a rock star. And I told you that I needed to be able to tell the difference between the two. And it's interesting that a lot of our prototypes, our mental image of a category, is very similar from one another. Most of you had a cowboy hat on the country singer or guitar, and most of you had spiky hair or long hair for the rock star. And that's your mental image of a category. There's the rock star and the country singer. Okay, so prototype. And I also asked you to picture a bird in your mind. And most of you would have pictured something that looks like this. On the left, most of you weren't thinking penguin, although penguin is actually a bird as well. So that is your prototype. Then we looked at two different types of thinking. Convergence. Okay, so this is when you're faced with a problem or a question and you have to pick the best solution. So you're converging in. An example would be like a multiple choice test. Here's the question, here are your options, pick the best answer. Divergent is the opposite. Here you're faced with a question or a problem and you have to come up with multiple solutions to that problem. So this involves creativity. You're not given options. You have to create the solutions. So divergent. So I gave you an example, let's say in elementary school, which word rhymes with slice? That would be convergent. You have to pick the correct answer. Or you could say to a child, list as many words that you know that rhyme with lead. So that would be divergent. Right, so the next thing we looked at was problem solving, different problem solving strategies. So for the first one, I gave you this problem in class. I have my glasses on, which said, 3 men, Fred, Ed, and Ted, are married to Joan, Sally, and Vicky. Joan, who's married to Ed's sister, lives in Detroit. Fred dislikes animals. Ed weighs more than the man married to Vicky. The man married to Sally breeds cats. Fred commutes over 200 hours a year from his home in Ann Arbor to Detroit for work. Match them with who they're married to. Okay, so you're faced with this problem. It's not a problem that you can just automatically say, oh, I know the answer to. You have to break it down. Okay, so you have to look at the details there. Joan is Ed's sister, so they're not going to be married. Ed weighs more than the man married to Vicky, so he's not married to Vicky. So Ed can't be married to Joan. Ed can't be married to Vicky, so he's married to Sally. And Fred lives in Ann Arbor, and Joan lives in Detroit, so that eliminates them. So through process of elimination, you come up with the answer. This is known as dissecting or breaking it down bit by bit. And a lot of times, many of the problems that we're faced with, we have to do that. It's hard to just immediately know the answer. All right, for the next strategy, I gave you this particular question. What number would come next in this series? 10, 4, 3, 11, and 15. So most of you in class were trying to figure out some mathematical pattern. And that's because you've seen problems like this before in math class, where you are adding to or taking away. What is the pattern you would find in math class? But I actually tricked you. It was a different type of pattern. 10 has 3 letters. 4 has 4 letters. 3 has 5 letters. 11 has 6 letters. 15 has 7 letters. So the next option would be 14. So it would be A. You were just adding a letter each time. All right, so the example of this strategy is referred to as your mental set. This is using some strategy that worked in the past, using your prior knowledge. So again, most of you were trying to find some mathematical pattern, but none existed. But that's what you were used to. That was your mental set. So here we have the tendency to approach a problem from a way that was successful for us in the past. So the next pattern, OTTF, what would come next in that pattern? That's difficult to figure out because most of you would not have a mental set or prior knowledge with that particular type of question. But when I gave you the answer, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that would be 5, 6, 7, FSS. Then you have that mental set, and then I gave you these particular questions, and JFMA. Some of you were able to figure it out because you had that mental set. So that's January, February, March, April, May, June, July. And then obviously this one would have been easy. That's the type of problem that you had been used to where you were doing math. So you have mental set in that. So your mental set is just using a strategy you've used in the past, your prior experience. Right, then I gave you a few little riddles. And as you're reading those, it's interesting because you read over them. What is it? What is it? And then, oh, bam, you get it. It's like a light bulb goes off. And that's the next problem-solving strategy called insight. So these were man overboard. The maker doesn't want it. The buyer doesn't use it. And the user doesn't see it. That was a coffin. How can you physically stand behind your father while he's standing behind you? You stand back to back. What occurs once in every minute, twice in every moment, yet never in 1,000 years is the letter M. And that would be side by side at the bottom. So it's interesting to see you all in class as you read over them. You're like, what in the heck would this be? And then bam, you figure it out. And again, this is called insight. It's just that sudden realization to the solution of a problem. All right, so the next strategy is an algorithm, and you probably use these in math class. So this is a formula or a rule or a procedure that guarantees you will solve the problem, but it can take a very long time. So let's say your mother asked you to go to the store and buy some type of sauce you've never heard of, oyster sauce or something. So you think to yourself, I have no idea what this is. You could go down every single aisle and look on every single shelf, and you'd probably be guaranteed to find it if it was there. So that's an algorithm. Or let's say you wanted to hack into someone's computer. If you watch them put in their passcode and they hit 5 keys, you could figure it out by using every single number, letter, symbol combination on the keyboard, but it would take an extremely, extremely long time. So algorithms guarantee you'll solve the problem, but can take a long time. A heuristic is a simpler strategy. It's a faster way of solving a problem, but it can be very error prone. So, for example, if you are going to the store, instead of looking up and down every aisle for that sauce, you might think, well, it might be in the condiment aisle, or it could be if it was oyster or fish sauce, it could be like with the Asian food. So that can help you solve the problem a lot faster, but it can be error prone. It might not be there. With the password, you could, instead of using every single letter, number, symbol combination, a lot of people use passwords that their sports teams or their pet or something that's familiar to them. So you could try that. Again, it'd be faster if you could solve it, but the likelihood is slim, so it's more error prone. All right, so that was everything with thinking or cognition. Now we're going to look at obstacles to decision making, why we make poor decisions sometimes. All right, the first would be availability heuristic. So this is making a decision based on things that you've recently seen, things that sometimes show up on the news, and then we think that they're going to happen to us. So things that come to mind readily, we make decisions on. So let's say someone sees a plane crash on TV. A lot of people will cancel their upcoming flights for their vacation because they're thinking, well, oh no, it's unsafe, so it's going to happen to me. Another example, the Summer of the Shark. Several years ago, the news media commented on every single shark attack. So I fall for this. I take my kids to the beach and I'm like, you can't get in the water. Sharks are everywhere. You can only get in like up to your knees. And it was because we were seeing it on the news over and over and over again. So we're thinking, oh my goodness, they're running rampant this summer. But actually, there were fewer shark attacks that year than the previous year. The media just didn't really have anything to cover. I have a picture here of the anthrax. See, that would have been in 2000 or 2001. You saw in the news, people were getting, well, I think just a couple people got a package with the anthrax in it, which is deadly. I mean, I was opening the mail with gloves on. Like, what's the probability that I was going to get a package, that had anthrax when like 3 people in the whole nation had that happen? But you see it and you automatically think, oh, this is common and it's going to happen to me. So we make silly decisions as a result of it. All right, another type of heuristic. I asked you, which of these individuals do you think went to Harvard? Well, I had Joe Biden on here for a long time, actually back when he was the vice president. And it was funny because people would say, oh, the guy in the suit. It's like, that's your vice president of the nation, and people didn't know. But most people would say, it's probably him. But we would be wrong. It would be misleading. It would cause us to make a poor decision. Sonia Dara here, she is a Sports Illustrated swimsuit model who went to Harvard, has a degree in economics. And Fitzpatrick, Ryan Fitzpatrick went to Harvard. So, but we tend to make our decisions based on our prototype, our image, our mental image of a particular category and you think of someone from Harvard as being stuffy and in a suit, but that would be misleading. This is known as the representativeness heuristic. So you're making a decision based on your prototype or your mental image, what comes to mind when you think of that category. So another example I gave you, who is more likely to be a kindergarten teacher in your mind? Most of you wouldn't think Trump or Mr. Baker or Mr. Twig. We tend to think of a female as being a kindergarten teacher. So most of you would have picked Miss Bonzo, but that could be misleading. Mr. Twig could be the best kindergarten teacher ever, but that is the way we make our decisions, our mental image of a category. So let's say you need a nanny for your child. You're going back to work and you need someone to care for them. So you have interviews. Okay, picture a nanny. All right, so these two show up. Most of you would think a nice little old lady to be a nanny. But again, that could be a bad decision. He could be the best babysitter ever with your child, and she could smack your child with their pocketbook when you leave. But we tend to, again, have that mental image, and that causes us to make that decision. All right, framing can cause us to make poor decisions as well, the way something is posed or worded. So I have here, you're more likely to buy a product or meat that says 25% lean as opposed to 75% fat. We see that word fat and we back off. People who sell merchandise know this very well. They say, here, these are 2 for $5. Strawberries are 2 for $5. I fall for it. Oh, look, 2 for $5. But if you think about it, they're normally just $2.50 anyway. But the way it's phrased or framed or worded can influence our decision. Another obstacle to decision making is the fact that we're overconfident. So we tend to think we're better or know more than we actually do. A lot of people think they're really safe drivers for their age group, and people even say they're in the top 10%. We just have that thought about ourselves. And I often hear students say, I don't need to study for this test. I know this pretty well, but then you sit down and start to take it, and you're like, yeah, I probably should have studied. That was being overconfident. My husband drives me crazy when we're watching a football game. He'd be like, that ball went right through that guy's hands. How come I could have caught that? I don't know how many times he says that. And I'm like, yeah, middle-aged man sitting here on the couch saying you could catch a football, and this professional athlete who's in their 20s making millions of dollars, you're better than they are. But that's overconfidence. Confirmation bias. We tend to seek out information that supports our ideas and our beliefs. We don't like to hear the other side. So if you are a conservative, chances are you watch Fox News. Your parents watches Fox News. If you are liberal, your family would probably watch CNN or MSNBC. We don't like to hear the other side, but that can be misleading as well because you never hear another opinion. It's being very subjective. And it's hard to do that, whenever you have an idea here at school or somewhere in your life, you usually don't seek people out who disagree with you to hear the other side, but we actually should try and be more objective. All right, fixation. This is the inability to solve a problem from a different perspective. So something that isn't a traditional way of solving a problem. You become fixated. So I gave you the example in class. One of the teachers, their remote was broke or stolen, I can't remember, and they had to order a new one. But every day they would come across the hall to use mine. And it's like, there is other ways. There's a power button on there. You can just, click it with a ruler or something and turn it on. But that was being fixated, not seeing a way to solve a problem from any other perspectives. Functional fixedness, this is the tendency that you can only use an object for something other than it was intended to be used for. So let's say you see a nail sticking out of a board. Most people would get a hammer, but let's say you can't find one. You don't want to spend hours looking for a hammer that you have no idea where it's at. Just use like a block or a brick or a book or something else that's hard to get the nail in. Some people can't do that. On the AP test, there's often a question about a girl who's camping and she couldn't figure out, she forgot her pillow and just laid her head on the ground. Most of us would roll up something soft and use it as a pillow, but that would be fixation. All right, so belief perseverance. This is having a strong belief or opinion about something. And if somebody gives you evidence that discredits it, you still cling to that belief. It still perseveres. So, people who have iPhones, when other people with the Android say how much better their phone is and the reasons why, someone with an iPhone just completely ignores it. Whatever, mine's better. And the same for someone with an Android, if they hear people talking about iPhones, they don't want to hear that. A lot of people said that President Obama was not born in the US, but then he provided his birth certificate, and people still tended to discredit that. So that's belief perseverance. And there's just some practice questions I gave you in class. All right, so the next topic we need to look at in this lesson is the language. So things that we speak, write, even gestures, all fall under the definition of language because they all communicate some type of meaning. All right, so first of all, the 3 building blocks. This was our English lesson. I'm going to grab some more coffee for this. All right, so a phoneme is the first building block that we looked at. So this is the smallest unit in a language that carries sound only. So this could be a consonant, it could be a vowel, it could be 2 letters together that you can't break down and still get the same sound without having 2 or more. So we actually have 44 phonemes in the English language. An example like s or or ch. It's like a ch or sh. You can't break down ch or sh and still get the sh or ch sound. It would be kh if you sounded them out separate. So again, we have 44 of them. And I gave you the example of chug. Chug would have 3. Ch, g. Again, you can't separate the C and the H and still get that ch sound. It would be k, h, g. So it wouldn't sound like chug. All right, the second would be a morpheme. Morpheme is the smallest unit that carries meaning. So phonemes are sound. Think morpheme, meaning. So this could be a whole word that you can't separate and still get meaning. It can be a part of a word. Any prefix or suffix is going to change the meaning of the word. So that would be a morpheme. So for example, I, okay, that refers to me. So one letter is a morpheme here, or A, somebody's possession. Bat, you can't break that down and have any other meaning. So that's the whole word, and that's a morpheme. Unladylike would have 3, because un means not, lady is a female, and like is characteristics of a female. So people, that would have one, you can't break that down, have meaning. Wanted, or sorry, waited, I don't have my glasses on. So that would make it past tense, so it has two, wait, and then ed. George's, adding the S, gives that two because now that's his possession. Unhappy, not happy, so two. Water, that would be one, you can't break that down. Houseboat would have two. All right, so then the third building block in language we looked at would be grammar. And two specific grammatical rules. First of all, semantics. So these are rules that we have in a given language that change the meaning of a word. So for example, adding an ed will make it past tense. That's a semantic rule. Adding an s will make things plural or possessive. Syntax, on the other hand, these are rules that we have in a language for how we arrange words in a sentence to provide, to communicate them. So for example, in the English language, we have adjectives before nouns. So we say sad song, happy camper. We say white house. Other languages are reversed. In Spanish, they have the noun before the adjective. So we say white house, they say casa blanca. So those are the difference. Semantics is referring to words and the meaning. Syntax, how we arrange words in a sentence. All right, we looked at language development in children, and we looked at the different stages. So first of all, there are two different types of language, receptive and productive. Productive is actually when children learn to make sounds and talk and communicate. They understand what you're saying. They understand language way before they can communicate. You know, if you tell a child, no, don't do that, they've learned. That means stop. Okay, they can't communicate yet, but they're understanding certain things that you say. All right, so the first stage that babies go through would be cooing, and this begins between the first and second month, and it's nice and soft and pleasant. It's just coo, 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 kind of like that. Little sounds that they make. And then around 3 to 4 months of age, they start babbling, and it's a little bit more bold and loud sound. Bah, 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 bah. But during this stage, what's interesting is every baby in all cultures babble exactly the same. Okay, so if we had babies from Japan and from Italy and from Africa and England here, and they were all sitting in the back of the room and you couldn't see them, you wouldn't know which baby was which. They all sound exactly the same. And during this stage lasts till about a year, 10 to 12 months of age. But during this stage, children are wide open to receive and learn all of the sounds and the syllables in every language, any language. Once they start speaking their household language at about a year of age, that window closes. And there are certain sounds that they can't recognize in other languages. By the way, this is pictures of my grandson. I like to show him all. All right, so again, up until children start speaking their household language, they're wide open to learn any language and recognize all of the sounds in any language. At about a year of age, that closes off. So if you've ever seen the movie Christmas Story, when the dogs destroy the turkey and they have to go out to eat, they go to an Asian restaurant and the workers are singing Christmas carols to them, and they sing fa la 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 la, but they're saying fa ra 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 ra, because many Asian speakers cannot tell the difference between fa and ra, or fa and la, and to them they sound exactly the same. So for the English speakers, there's a sound in the Hindi dialect that I let you all hear, and most English speakers cannot tell the difference between. To them, it sounds very distinctive, but we can't tell. I had a girl from Germany here as a foreign exchange student one year, and she would always say dis and dat. And I said to her, it's this with your tongue, this and that. And she said, that's what I said, dis and that. So to her, the th and the the and duh sounded exactly the same. Right. So again, at 1 year, they lose that ability to learn any sound from any language. And then they go into the third stage, the holophrastic or one word stage. And this happens at about a year and lasts until about 2 years of age, 18 months, 2 years. But babies during this stage just communicate using one word. Like they want you to pick them up. They say up. And they want to go. They point to the door. So they're communicating with one word. Then around the age of 2, some babies get there, toddlers get there earlier than that. Children go into the 2-word stage where now they start communicating everything with 2 words. So me up, I go. It's very telegraphic. So this is called telegraphic speech, because way back when people said telegraphs, you left out like helping words. It was basically nouns and verbs when you communicate, or pronouns. So then the last stage is sentence formation. And this usually happens right after 2 years of age, 2.5 years of age. Children will start speaking in complete sentences. All right, so there are 2 different theories on how we learn language. The first was proposed by Skinner. So Skinner said that we learn through imitating people around us and what they're saying. He referred to this as the social learning theory, and we're conditioned. We are rewarded when we say things and say things correctly, and we're scolded when we use the wrong terminology. Such as, I go to the store. They would say, no, you went to the store. So you're corrected when you use the wrong grammar. So that's how we learn language, according to Skinner. Chomsky believed that we're just born with this ability to know how to speak and understand grammar. It's inborn. He said that we learn language way too quick for it to be something that's acquired. And if we're saying things like, I go to the store, that's something that the child came up with, most likely. Hopefully they're not observing an adult saying that. So there has to be something inborn, according to Chomsky, that allows us to develop language. He believed we have a language acquisition device in our brains that we're born with. We do know that, yes, we are born with the ability to speak and understand language, but we do need that socialization. We looked at Jeannie in class, who was the child that was basically raised in complete isolation in her parents' home, locked away without communication with anyone, day after day after day. And there is a critical period. She was born with the ability to speak, but she was never spoken to or allowed to talk. So that never developed in her. So socialization is very important for language. And we know that there's a critical period. She wasn't found till around puberty. And we know that that is where the window closes and those parts of our brain start to deteriorate because they've never been used. And the last thing we looked at, this is Worf's linguistics, either relativity or determinism. They both mean the same thing. So this is the idea that language determines the way we think. We don't think about things that we don't have words for. And I had an example here, the Hopi tribe. They don't have any words for the past, so they never think about the past. We think about the past because we have words for it. We don't think about things we don't have words for. So language determines the way we think. All right, so that's everything for today. For those of you here, I recommend you go again to your practice book and look over any questions that go along with this unit, and let me know if you come across something that you're unfamiliar with, and I will explain it. I'll be here for about another half hour. And I will see you all in class on Monday. Right. Have a good day.